two of my favorite new books this year in 2023 were released by two of my favorite authors. So one is Reframe Your Brain by Scott Adams. You'll know him as the creator of Dilbert. And the other one is called Be Useful by Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you haven't, so let me describe each of them, and then there's a little bit of comparison to be made. So if you haven't followed Scott Adams in recent years, he's become a podcaster, and he's pretty political, but his focus actually is on persuasion and how people influence us in media and pop culture and politics. So, for example, I think he became a popular podcaster back in 2016 when he was an early predictor that Donald Trump would win the presidential election, and it was based on his persuasion. And he's a fan of Robert Cialdini, if you've read his books, Persuasion, and I think the other one is called Prefluence or something like that. They're both excellent, kind of must-reads if you're interested in persuasion. And Scott Adams will introduce himself often as a trained hypnotist, which I guess is the case, but he's very good at persuasion. So in this book, Reframe Your Brain, what he's doing is taking beliefs and reframing them to help you succeed better. This is just a trick we can play on ourselves. So, for example, let me think of an example. So, say right now I'm commuting, I'm in traffic. So I could say my daily commute is a miserable waste of time that makes me unhappy. That would be a framing. And lots of people see their commute that way, for sure. And it's not a crazy position. There's some truth to it, right? But Scott Adams, I believe, would say a better frame would be my daily commute gives me a predictable time period in which I can collect my thoughts and plan for the day before arriving at the office. And so that would be a positive reframe, because you'd say, now this goes from being a horrible experience to something that's useful and that you'll actually take useful action for. And he focuses on reframing your ideas so that you can be more productive and just generally happier. And he gives quite a few examples. A lot of the book is giving examples of reframes. So that is a good skill. And it was an excellent book. It was just fun to read. I'll definitely reread that again. So Arnold Schwarzenegger's Be Useful, and there's a subtitle, which is 7 Tools for Life, would be on kind of the other extreme of self-help books, where to me, there were definitely topics that he talked about. The 7 tools that he mentioned are actually useful, good ideas, but they're not super novel. None of it's going to surprise you a lot. What this is a pure motivation book, and Schwarzenegger is so good at that. I've been, a little background on him, I've been a longtime fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you don't know him very well, you might think of him as just a movie star or just a bodybuilder, but actually, he wrote this other great book, which was Total Recall, which is his autobiography. It's long and complete and great. And in that, he talks about his financial history, and you learn that he made like 4 different fortunes. He had already made a good amount of money from information products related to bodybuilding before he ever got into movies. And that, of course, was long before he entered politics, which was another place where he succeeded. If you don't have the patience for the book, there's also that recent Netflix series. It's, I think, a 3-part series, and it covers his life in a pretty good way. Like, I thought it was great and complete. One thing that's interesting about Be Useful and Total Recall is, in the book Total Recall, this was right after his scandal where, you remember, he had an affair with his maid, and then he and his wife, Maria Shriver, divorced. So Total Recall came out, and he talked about that, but very briefly. It was not a big part of the book. And in the book Be Useful, he kind of deals more directly with that right at the first. He explains that he doesn't want to go into details because he doesn't want to harm Maria Shriver or his kids or anything like that. But he acknowledges his shortcoming there and kind of discusses it in a productive way. In recent years on Twitter, I would say just in the past year, really, on Twitter and elsewhere, Arnold Schwarzenegger has kind of transformed into more of a self-help motivational guru. And this book is great for just motivation. So if you already know what you're working on, you're grinding away against on some project, this is a good book to just help you keep focused and kind of use your efforts in a productive way. So I see these books as being 2 very different angles on the same sort of challenges. We're trying to be useful and productive. Adams kind of says, here's how you do it by changing your thinking, and Schwarzenegger gets you pumped up to do it. So both great books. And also, here's one other thing to think about. If you happen to read both books, even though they're very different, like Scott Adams is this kind of more runner physique, skinny-ish cartoonist and business person. He has a business background. He wrote a great autobiography about succeeding in business. And Schwarzenegger is this massive, famous movie star, huge personality guy. Actually, their personality tendencies are quite similar. So watch for that if you read the two books. And these would be maybe my two favorite books of the year. Definitely really high on the list. So enjoy those.